Good morning. Welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays. I am Ariana Newcomer, Dove Oracle Priestess, Sound Healer, Spiritual Mentor, and glad to be with you today to talk more about why your music is depriving you. I started this topic last week, and you can check out last week's Wisdom Wednesdays. This is a continuation of that discussion about why our MP3 format music and even the new M4A, etc., music is not healthy for us and how it can be actually damaging us in various ways. So I talked about the fact that MP3 music is condensed and compressed in order to make the digital files smaller so that we can fit lots and lots of them on our digital devices. This is why we can fit, thousands of songs on our phones or our iPods. But how that is done is that some of the very high frequencies are removed, some of the very low frequencies are removed, and the rest is compressed, which really makes it sound different. And I mentioned the article about Neil Young that was in the week before, Sunday New York Times Magazine, and how he's, of course, a famous singer-songwriter and musician, and he complains bitterly about the digital music and the way that it changes and alters his music and all other music. So we need to be aware. One of the things that I didn't talk about last week that is really important to understand is that when we can train our brains to only pay attention to certain frequency ranges. And so we're doing that. If we're always listening to MP3, then our brains are being trained to tune into this compressed frequency format. So we're actually losing our brain's ability, not necessarily our ear's ability to hear, but our brain's ability to tune into those very higher frequencies and the lower, deeper frequencies that are missing in the MP3s. Now there's a new format, it's called M4A, which is a little better, but it's still missing a lot of frequencies. So when we train our brains to only pay attention to this limited frequency range, we're potentially causing ourselves trouble in areas like language and being able to hear when other people are speaking and to be able to understand what people are saying to us. The difference between the letters B and D in English is in the overtones. It's in those high overtones. And this is a reason why some people with dyslexia actually have an auditory processing disorder. It's mostly considered to be a visual disorder. But if you can't hear the difference between B and D and P, for instance, which all have the same ending vowel, don't they? But the difference is in those overtones. If you can't hear those overtones, then you're not going to be able to distinguish the difference between those letters. So some of the issues that our kids can have with reading can have to do with this auditory processing issue. But we might be creating those kinds of problems for ourselves by training our brains out of paying attention to those other frequencies which exist. Now, another thing in our hearing is that we can actually tune out certain sounds and frequency ranges. And I had this experience in my own voice injury that ended my singing career. I eventually found out years after I had stopped singing that I literally couldn't hear that I wasn't on pitch in a certain part of my range. And that's when I went to do my Tomatis-based listening training and then became a provider of the listening program for a number of years, working with kids with learning difficulties. So auditory processing is actually a very complicated set of functions in our brains. There are at least 12 of them, and it's not the ear. So I like to say that hearing is what the ears do. It's the act of collecting sound. Listening is what the brain does with what the ears hear. And that's actually a lot of very complex processes that have to occur all together at once in order for us to process sound really fast and make sense out of what we're hearing. So it's the brain that's making sense out of all of that sound input into the ears. And so I literally, and perhaps it was because of the way I had been trained, my classical voice training, my brain had stopped paying attention, had literally stopped paying attention, had tuned out certain frequency ranges, perhaps because it was too loud in my head. Or another possibility was that I was tuning out a certain frequency range in my now ex-husband's voice because the relationship was really toxic. So when I did my retraining, the hearing test that I had before I did my listening training showed this missing, the missing frequencies that I wasn't hearing. It was actually both ears that I was not, quote unquote, hearing these certain frequencies. And after I did my listening training, a second hearing test showed that I was now hearing those frequencies again, because my brain had been given this lots and lots of input of all of these different frequencies and been forced to pay attention, keep paying attention by various effects that were engineered into the music. So it's a really, really complex thing and really interesting thing. So I really encourage you as much as you can. I understand that we want to have our favorite stuff in these smaller formats so we can carry it around with us, but try out using some of the lossless formats like AIFF for Apple and WAV for Microsoft Android devices. It's not the complete range of frequencies that you would get in hearing live music, but it is more. It's quite a bit more than the MP3 and M4A formats, and you will actually be giving nourishment to your brain. You'll be protecting your hearing, actually your listening abilities, and you'll be improving your abilities to understand languages. Another interesting thing is that languages have different frequency ranges that they normally operate in. So this is another thing that Dr. Tomatis investigated, and it's a reason why many people who grew up speaking Japanese or speaking Spanish or speaking another language might have difficulty really getting the accent in a different language. So it's very common that I think it's our L sound that doesn't exist in the Japanese language. And so it's very difficult for the brains of Japanese speakers to actually produce that sound because they didn't grow up hearing the sound. It's hard for us to produce a sound that we can't hear or our brains can't process. So the different frequency ranges, Spanish has a narrower frequency band range, English is wider. I think French is in between Spanish and English. The Slavic languages generally have a very wide frequency range. And British English, with all of the aspirations and all that, has a very high, very wide frequency band. So it's so much more interesting, this whole thing about sound and vibration and frequency. And remember too that our human hearing is what we can hear is not the only sound that exists. It's not the only sound that exists. Our human hearing is actually pretty limited. Everybody knows dogs can hear a lot more frequencies than we can. They can hear much higher frequencies than we can. Elephants and whales can hear much lower frequencies than we can and use them. And just because we can't hear them doesn't mean they don't exist. So let's broaden our perceptions. Let's open our sound palette. Now, one of the ways that we can experience frequencies that we can't hear is by feeling them. Feeling them. So it's vibration, and we have these other sensory capabilities. It's not just vision and taste and hearing and smell and touch, which are the ones that are 5 that are considered the primary senses. Our what people have called extra senses, which I call our divine birthright as human beings, is to be able to sense these other vibrations. And that opens up just wonderful, rich, deep experience of the world that we otherwise are depriving ourselves of. So MP3 music is depriving us of the frequencies we can hear, and it's reducing the range that our brains will tend to pay attention to, because we're training them to just pay attention to a narrow range. But then our other senses, our ability to feel vibrations, feel energy, subtle energies with our energy fields and our inner sight, our all the clairs, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, claircognizance. These are real senses that we need to reclaim as our divine birthright. And this is one of the reasons why I just love working with the tuning forks. And I'm still running this special on doing tunings I'll be doing this through the month of September at a special rate, just $50 an hour. Many tunings take an hour and a half, but it's exploring your energy field with this coherent, harmonious sound that the tuning forks create. And this is not just one frequency. The tuning fork might have a frequency marked on it, that is its base frequency, but the tuning fork is producing also overtones, higher pitches, and undertones, lower pitches. And as we move the tuning fork through your energy field, it sends information vibrationally to me through the fork. And many of my clients are able to hear this too. When the sound in the fork changes, it's so fascinating because something has come up in the field. And then we can explore, okay, what is this? And we can clear that energy. Sometimes it's tangled and chaotic energy that got stuck out in the field from some kind of traumatic event, some accident or something. Sometimes it's something you might not even remember, but it's something that we can harmonize, clarify, and then bring back in so your body can use it for whatever it needs to use it for. So the body's own healing intelligence will take that energy and use it for whatever it needs it to. Hi, Vanessa. Hi, Donna. Thanks for joining. Yeah, it is really cool. It is really cool. So I will put a link in the comments where you can book a time to talk with me, and we can set up an appointment for you if you would like. This works in distance tunings as well as in person. So I'm in the Santa Cruz Mountains, just in the Santa Cruz area. If you're in my area, you're welcome to come for an in-person session. But my clients are finding that the distance sessions are also extremely powerful. So people find themselves generally more integrated, feeling more integrated energetically. One client said, oh, now my upper body feels connected to my lower body when it didn't before. And dealing with the chaotic energies that are swirling around us from the shifts in Earth's magnetic field, from the Wi-Fi and electromagnetic radiation that we're all bombarded with now all the time. Being tuned can really help you manage your own energy and discharge things that don't belong, and then bring up your own voltage, your energy level, and get yourself more aligned, connected, and clear. People talk about feeling much more clear. And many times old traumatic issues come up, and they can be actually cleared with the sound, with the vibrations of the tuning forks, without having to do a heck of a lot of going back into the issue and trying to clear it with the brain. We can clear these things energetically too. It's a great support for that kind of thing. So try out using the full format music styles. Pay attention to what you're feeding your brain. Give your brain the nutrition of more frequencies. And if you want to give yourself this nutrition of attuning, I'd be delighted to help you next time.